Okay. Hello today. Um, I'm gonna illustrate a bit of the cosmetic and some mechanical differences between the CZ75 Pre B, my example being made in Czechoslovakia in 1990, and the TZ75 Series 88, made in Italy in 89. As you can tell, I just cleaned it recently. Gave this a pretty deep cleaning too. It certainly needed it. And of course, at a glance, they look very similar. Besides a little bit of like cosmetic differences. Like this is a transitional model, so it has this like shitty polycoat finish. As you can tell, it flakes off in some of the higher wear areas, and it's just kind of not that great looking. But might get that refinished at some point. And with the TZ75, it is blued, fairly polished, I'd say. This one has a little bit of wear, but otherwise is in pretty decent condition. As you can see between them, the controls are pretty similar. This has like the old style teardrop, quote unquote, safety, and this one has a slightly longer slide stop lever, which I kind of like. And the grips don't really matter that much. These are aftermarket, and these came with the gun, but it's kind of funny how they both have wood grips. Now, the trigger on this one is excellent. Like, the double action smooth and the single action, like, there's a little bit of take up, just a little bit of take up, then bang. Now, this one has Cajun springs, so it's not exactly a fair comparison, but it's pretty light. Still a little bit of take up, because I don't have the short reset system in it or whatever, just new springs. And the double action's smoother on this one. Magazines between these, since this is a small frame, are interchangeable, so I'll just show you that real quick. I don't know where these magazines came from, I just picked them up with each gun, funnily enough. Yeah, they lock back on open. And, since the Tanfoglio is a CZ clone, it's just gonna handle like a CZ. This one's actually heavier than the CZ, because, I think they still do this, but they use investment casting for the frames for the CZs, which is fine. A lot of pistols use, cast frames, and these will last forever as long as you take care of them. But I'm pretty sure this is just machined from a solid block of steel. It certainly feels that way. It's way more heftier than the CZ. I could probably put them on a scale later and measure them, but I don't really have an accurate scale to that degree, so it doesn't really matter that much. And on the CZ, the muzzle end, it has the blanked out muzzle end, kind of like the high power. Don't say it's a high power, because the CZ, while being a Browning-derived design, is more related to the SIG P210 than anything. The lineage traces directly to the P210. And while on the Tanfoglio, you have a visible guide rod and a fairly thick barrel with 2 Cs. These don't have ambidextrous controls or whatsoever. It's just, right side and right side. I know on the 85s they have ambi controls, and I think some TZ75s can have ambi controls, but don't quote me on that. And the grip of this feels really nice. It's a little sharper on this bend. It's sort of like a 1911 grip with a flat mainspring housing, but still feels my hand pretty well. I prefer something more rounded like this, because this feels my hand really well. But it's mostly like a cosmetic thing, and it doesn't really impact the handling that much, because these both like feel the same. Both have spur hammers. This one has the longer spur hammer, so if you have like fat mitts, which I do, but this doesn't really bite me. I've never been bitten by this pistol. So if you have like fat mitts, you know, you could get hammer bite, but it's never happened to me with this pistol. And with this one, it has a shorter spur hammer and a longer beaver tail, so if you had really fat mitts, you might get bitten, but it's not likely, especially with this beaver tail, and if you have the correct grip on it. The sights on this one, the camera will show, are like target style. I painted the front sight because I have shitty vision, so having some contrast is nice, but this has like the rear cup with the square, so you put the square in the cup, so it's not terrible. It's not my preferred sighting system. And this one has the classic 3 dots, but I painted the front sight orange for more contrast. Might get an adjustable sight for this one at some point, but it does the job decently. They're readable. I shoot my carry guns is a CZ75 P01 with a dot, and that's what I prefer, is using a dot. I might get a vintage scope mount for this one so I could build like a really 80s looking race gun, but that'll be later down the line. But my impressions with this pistol are it's very nice. This is an older... This one has been used a bit, so it's a little tired, but it's not too tired where it's unreliable. It's just very solid. I really like it. I think if you do get a TZ75, I'd say get the Series 88 if you like the CZ with the frame-mounted safety, because I know the earlier TZ75s have the slide-mounted decocker / safety, and you know, me personally, I prefer frame-mounted controls because they're just on the frame and they don't really add any complicated gubbins to the slide. But some people prefer slide-mounted controls because they have like freakishly long thumbs or whatever, and like I could certainly operate like a slide-mounted control on a CZ, but like I just prefer frame-mounted. It keeps things simpler. But there might be some misconceptions. Like there are some interchangeable parts between these, but slides and barrels don't interchange between these. Magazines do, obviously. I think some of the smaller fire control parts can. Maybe slide stops. I haven't tested that. Kind of too lazy to at the moment, but like I'd say these are pretty good, and the Tanfoglio clones are certainly good. Of course, this one's a little beat up, as is this one, but this one's a little more nicer in the machining department compared to this transitional model, because you know this is made when it was still called Czechoslovakia in 1990, and they were going through a bunch of transitional things, and of course this one's made in Italy. You know, if you like pasta, you'll like this, and if you like beer, you'll like this.